So what we're going to do today is something that a lot of people don't know how to do. It's creating MIDI, sending MIDI out of Pro Tools. Now you need a interface with MIDI on it. So in this case, one of my good friends, he allowed me to use the Command 8. I actually sold my Control 24 to the pastor. They do a lot more vocal recordings, things like that, where I'm doing mostly mixing. So my main desk, if you see it over here, is right in front of me, right where I need it to be, and it's good to go. But now here's the deal. A lot of times, you know, when let's just put it this way, this year I'm getting more into the production side of things, and I thought, okay, I want Pro Tools to be my main master. Now you can do this one of two ways. You can make it your master clock, or you can make it your slave to the MPC. So we have the MPC Touch over here. Let me get into the configurations so you guys can see what's going on. Now if you have an external computer, this is for the people out there that want to use this externally, that have two computers, want to use the MPC Touch like a regular MPC. Now, note, you can go on their website and learn how to like route it inside the same computer and things like that, but there isn't really a set one. You almost have to go off of what the MPC 2500s and the MPC 5000s did. Now, what we had to do was, first and foremost, you got to make sure the Generate MTC is on. You have to do that, okay? If it's not on, it's not sending any signal. The other thing we had to do, so we had to go to MIDI, we had to go to MIDI beat clock. Now, if you notice here, Command 8 port 2 is the only one that really needs to be active, but it's going to send a beat clock out at that given beats per minute. The other thing that you want to do is go into your session. So you went to setup, and then you go to session, and you're going to look at this window and see where your time code rate is. So it's at 30, and if you look, it's 30 frames per second with no drop. So if you have 30 frames per second drop, and your MPC's 30 frames per second no drop, you're going to have all kinds of issues, and somebody's going to be like, dude, what the heck's wrong with you? And you're not going to know what to do. So make sure that these sync together. Now, in the MPC Touch, it's the exact opposite. I mean, it's the exact identical scenario, and I'll show you on that software as well. So the other thing that I did with peripherals, I think that's how you say it, is synchronization. Just go into this and Command port 2. That's my port. Whatever port on Pro Tools is MIDI, whichever one that you're sending the signal out of. So if it's like, you know, let's say it's a USB MIDI interface or USB keyboard, it would be that keyboard's output generating MTC to send it. Okay, so now I don't know which one's the actual, because I had to do all these to get it to work, and that's why I'm making this video. So you got Command port 2. That is what I'm hooked up to. That's what's going out of Pro Tools into the MPC. So the other thing that I did, once again, was I went to MIDI beat clock, and I checked Command port 2. I actually checked them all. And then the session, you make sure the frame rate's right. So between these two, you have a general idea that everything is sending out. Now, general MTC has to be active. If I take this off, it's literally stopping it. So now if you look at this, now we have a separate, totally separate computer. This is a totally different thing. I like doing it this way. I've always done it this way. It's just always worked for me this way. But now we go into MPC preferences. You see your MIDI. First of all, make sure these are active, the public and the touch MIDI ports. I don't think this really matters, but I just set it to touch MIDI ports for MIDI mapping, which it actually could probably screw it up. I think that's for internal use for different tracks to send different places. For example, if you were hooking up like a sound module and you wanted that to trigger MIDI port A instead of your programs. So this stuff I don't think matters. Now here's what really does matter. When you go to sync, you have to set this. It kept telling me to set it to MTC, and it was false, okay? I set it to MTC and it doesn't work right. I set it to MIDI clock and it started working. So I don't understand that. It told me to set it to MTC, but it doesn't work. I set it to MIDI clock, it works. Now 30 non-drop has to be the same. That's why we looked at that window. So when I hit play in Pro Tools, like I'm not even close to this thing, this thing should sync along, and it does. And actually the BPM changed. Did you notice that on the bottom of the screen? So it is sending its BPM as well. So yeah, so now what is the purpose of doing this? I mean, in this kind of situation, it's so everything's working together. It's good to probably change the BPM to 85. As you can see, when I hit play, it just like automatically switched. But like I said, man, this is for guys that are trying to do this, and I'll show you what I'm about to do. So let's say I want to go to project, sequence. Let's say I want to go to a program. Let's say I want to go to dubstep. I don't. So I put that over there. So let's say I want to try out new sequences. Now these come in at their own BPM. But if I have this loaded, let's say I go to like Supreme Kit, this one, I'm just doing this as an example. This isn't how I like roll every time. But now that this is loaded, it's at 81 BPM, but when I push play, it's going to sync right along with this. Now, let me explain something to you. The only reason it didn't sync along is because I had it in record mode on Pro Tools. I'm going to put it on an auxiliary. I can already tell it's probably not going to work with it, but it might. That's so sweet, bro. It worked. Isn't that dope, dude? So it's playing the MPC, it's playing in sync, same MTC time code, so we can go through and experiment with different sounds and find out what we want. This is a really cool thing. So now, what's really cool about that is why we're building our foundation. One of the reasons that I lost a little bit of intrigue in the production side because I felt I was so much better at the engineering side, and I found to experiment with and start from scratch, I think this will build a new foundation for a lot of producers that are getting, you know, just want to find something new. This allows you to be in time with everything, and it's really cool for producers, and it's amazing to me how many producers don't know how to do that. So when you have this availability to you to be able to sync two things together like that, if you're mainly working in Pro Tools, I can rest assured if I take off that MTC, none of that's coming through, or just mute that you know, auxiliary. But I can start to build in parallel different drum beats as this is playing over here. And what's really cool about our setup is the reason I have it external. Because a lot of guys would just use it as a plug-in, and they're going, hey Doug, why don't you just use it as a plug-in? It's just never the way I've wanted to do it. I don't like it. But what happens here is this is running through the Neve channels we have, so the MPCs inherently, before we even touch it, we're tracking it through a Neve. And that, to me, just pays dividends over and over again, because when people hear that production, they hear that Neve, and they go, dude, your stuff sounds really good. Like, I don't know why it sounds so good, but just being able to use the line level inputs on this Neve, EQ it while it's still syncing. You don't have to just like go over there and like, okay, let's hit record and start and play, and start playing it and playing your part. You're always synced together with it, and it's so cool to do. And I wanted to do this video because a lot of people don't understand you can do that. You can do it with older MPCs, you can do it with keyboards, you can do it with anything that has MIDI on it. But to have Pro Tools be the master clock, send its MTC information to the input, MIDI input of the MPC Touch, and have the transport play almost like exactly on time instead of trying to dump samples in is a blessing. So I hope you like this video. If you've never ever even heard about this, it's really cool. So keep it gangsta.